Now, the biggest expo in the world is finally happening after a 12-month delay due to the pandemic. Dubai Expo 2020 kicks off in October, and the head of Israel's Foreign Trade Administration, Oehad, sat down with me this week to tell us what to expect. Oehad, head of the Foreign Trade Administration, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Sarah. My pleasure being here.
Now, tell me about Israel's pavilion at the World Expo 2020. Is there a theme? What does it focus on?
Israel is known as the nation of innovation. It used to be the startup nation, but we'd like to call it the nation of innovation. There is so much innovation coming out of Israel. And the pavilion, the Israeli pavilion, will focus on Israeli innovation, how Israel contributes to the world in many aspects, in water, in agriculture, and in other areas.
Now, Israel still had a pavilion at the Expo before the normalization agreement was signed with the UAE. How was this possible?
As the organizer, the UAE could invite any country they wanted, and as they want to focus on innovation, I think that they could not ignore Israel. And I think that the relations probably were getting warmer before the formal signing of the accords. I think that this was the reason why they invited Israel to be part of the pavilion.
So did anything change in regards to the opportunities for Israel in relation to the Expo or the pavilion after the normalization agreement was signed?
No, I think that this has not changed because you need to present the idea well in advance. But we are definitely going to use the opportunity now when we have formal relations to bring as many Israelis to the Expo, to bring as many Emiratis and foreigners outside of the UAE into the Israeli pavilion. And we can operate much more freely and to do more, and to, I would say, to activate more business and to promote Israel in a more active way.
Now, according to Foreign Minister Yair Lapid, bilateral trade between Israel and the UAE has reached $675 million just in 10 months. Now, where does this sit on your level of expectations?
I think that some of the trade that we see now on formal data was there before, but it just moved through third countries. So some of the trade is already an existing and previous trade. But we definitely see much more business interaction between Israeli and UAE business people. So some of it is new. For example, in the diamond sector, Israel and the UAE are diamond hubs. Another thing is the fact that right now there is a direct air traffic between Israel and the UAE, which facilitates business people to travel to each other's country. And we can see a lot of interest from Israeli business people and from UAE business people that want to collaborate and cooperate with each other.
Israeli exports dropped in 2020, but the figures were still impressive considering the circumstances. What can you attribute to this?
If you analyze the Israeli exports data, you see that most of the drop is in tourism, Israeli tourism services because of the COVID-19. And actually the exports of software, for example, went up by 18% during COVID-19. And I think one of the reasons why it went up so high is the very quick adjustment of Israeli companies to the new situation. And please remember that Israel does not produce cars, we do not produce machines. So we don't need facilities, we don't need land, we need people. And people can work from home. So the export activity didn't stop Israeli exports because of COVID-19.
And this year, Israel is expecting more than $120 billion worth of exports, which is a record. What can you tell us about that?
Actually, we wanted to reach $120 billion already in 2020, but COVID-19 stalled us. I think that the Israeli exports in the past few years has grown dramatically and significantly from 2 digits to 3 digits. And in 2020, we have 114. So we believe that we will surpass $120 billion on all levels. Every part in the Israeli exports will thrive.
And how can exporters be looked after during times like the pandemic? Is there any kind of financial aid or services that the government offer?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a network of about 50 offices around the world. There were the eyes and ears of the Israeli industry during COVID-19, where there was travel restrictions. People could not actually go to exhibitions, could not go and meet their business partners. So our commercial attaché network found itself assisting companies in things that we didn't do in the past, like, please, we need someone to be there when a contract is being signed. So we could help Israeli companies in this sense. In addition, we supported Israeli exporters last year with 100 million Israeli shekels to do international promotion activities, to export more, to hire local staff, to do more PR, to insure their product. So all this budget was higher than 2019. And in this sense, the Israeli government understood that there is a need to support Israeli exporters at this time. And the results is that we saw a very small decline in the Israeli exports.
Ohad Cohen, Head of the Foreign Trade Administration. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you much for having me here.